Tonight, we're listening to a story that begins with a single notification and ends with a man losing not just his wedding, but his entire idea of love. It's a confession about trust, about what happens when the person you thought you knew best shows you who they really are. At 2:47 in the morning, this is the Confession Stories, and the voice you're about to hear is his.
I didn't plan to open my laptop that night. I'd been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning slowly above me, counting every second of silence between the ticks of the clock. It was 2:47 a.m. when the Facebook notification popped up on my phone, a tiny blue glow in the dark. Lydia still wasn't home. Her bachelorette party had ended hours ago, or at least it should have. I wasn't the jealous type. 8 years together will sand down the edges of most insecurities. But that night, something felt off. The kind of quiet that tells you a storm's about to roll in. I opened my phone, expecting a text. Maybe a blurry selfie of her and her friends holding cocktails. Instead, I saw it. A photo that froze my heart in place. Lydia, my fiancée, the woman I'd spent nearly a decade building a life with, was sitting on some guy's lap, Murphy's Bar, downtown. Her arms were wrapped around his neck. Her smile wasn't the kind you give for a joke. It was the kind that makes other people look away. The caption read, "Last night of freedom. Thanks, girls, for the wildest bachelorette ever. No regrets. Last night single." Her friends filled the comments with fire emojis and "Get it, girl." Even her maid of honor, Sienna, had commented, "What happens at Bachelorette stays at Bachelorette. Oops." I stared at the screen for maybe 10 minutes, the way people stare at the wreckage after a crash, knowing there's nothing to save, but unable to look away. 8 years. 8 years of shared grocery lists, of Sunday mornings and car loans and whispered plans about kids. And this was how she chose to celebrate our future. Without thinking, I took a screenshot, then another. Then I opened my own Facebook page. I uploaded the photo and wrote one line, "First night of freedom." Then I changed my relationship status to single and tagged everyone who mattered, including her father, Richard Hartwell, the most uptight insurance executive in all of Portland, Maine. By 3 a.m., my phone was vibrating non-stop. Friends, family, co-workers. Everyone had an opinion, and most of them wanted front-row seats to the drama. Part of me hated it. Another part, the one that had swallowed too many quiet disappointments, felt something like relief. At least the truth was out.
15 minutes later, I heard Lydia's car in the driveway. The door slammed, her heels clattered on the hardwood like gunshots. She burst into the kitchen, still wearing her little black dress from the party, makeup smeared, hair wild, eyes blazing. "What the hell is wrong with you, Eli?" she screamed, waving her phone. "Are you completely insane?" I was sitting at the table, laptop open, watching the wildfire I'd started spread across town. "Wrong with me?" I said quietly. "I'm not the one grinding on strangers at my bachelorette party." "It was a joke," she shot back. "God, you're so insecure. It was harmless fun." I turned the laptop towards her, the photo filling the screen. "This looks harmless to you." Her face went pale. Just for a second, a flicker, before she built the wall back up. "You don't trust me after 8 years. That says everything about you, not me." "Who is he?" I asked. "Nobody," she said too fast. "Just some guy at the bar. Sienna dared me to take the picture. It meant nothing." But her hands trembled, and her eyes Those brown eyes I used to read like a book couldn't hold mine. That's when my phone rang. Richard Hartwell, her father. Lydia hissed, "Answer it!" I did. "Hello, Richard. Elliot Griffin speaking. What in God's name is going on?" His voice was cold, like the sound of ice cracking on a lake. "I'm getting calls from half the town about some nonsense on social media." "Ask your daughter," I said. "She can explain it." Lydia grabbed the phone. "Daddy, it's nothing."
Eli's just having a breakdown. The photo was a silly joke. I refreshed the browser. The post had already been shared 300 times. "A joke that's gone viral," I said. "Channel 8 News just picked it up. Congratulations, Onni, you're famous." Her face drained of colour. "This is insane. You're ruining everything over nothing." "I'm ruining everything?" I laughed, a sound that didn't feel like mine. "I'm not the one dry humping a stranger 3 days before our wedding." "Enough, both of you," Richard barked through the phone. "Lydia, come home. We'll discuss this like adults." She left without another word, heels clicking down the driveway until the night swallowed the sound. I sat there until sunrise, watching the notifications roll in, watching our life unravel pixel by pixel.
And when the adrenaline finally faded, a quiet, heavier question took its place. Who was that man? And why did something about him feel familiar? I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing across the kitchen counter. The sun hadn't even cleared the rooftops yet. I hadn't slept. I just sat there, watching the world scroll past my mistakes. When I finally picked up the phone, there were 37 missed calls, friends, co-workers, Lydia's father again, and a voicemail from Mrs. Carlin, our next-door neighbour who treated gossip like oxygen. I didn't want to listen, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice crackled through the speaker. "Oh, Eli dear, I saw the post. What a shame. I always wondered about that girl, you know, too ambitious if you ask me, and those late nights at the office, strange hours for someone in insurance." Late nights, that caught my attention.
I'd heard Lydia mention working late more times than I could count, but now I thought about the timeline, how she'd leave around 5:30 and somehow come home close to 10. Mrs. Carlin kept talking in the background of the voicemail. "Between you and me, her car's not always there when she says she's working late." I ended the call and just sat there, gripping the phone. Something had been happening right in front of me, and I'd been too in love, or too naive, to see it. By noon, the small town of Millbrook had turned into a circus. People were picking sides. Half thought I'd lost my mind. The other half thought I'd finally grown a spine. I needed facts. So I called Mike, my best friend since high school, and the guy who ran O'Malley's bar downtown. When he picked up, his first words were, "Dude, you broke the internet." "I'm not calling for jokes," I said. "I need a favor. Can you meet me for lunch?" "Already clearing my schedule," he said. "You sound like a man on a mission." We met around 1 o'clock at the far end of the bar where no one else could hear. Mike poured me a beer, slid over a basket of wings and leaned in. "All right, Eli," he said. "What's the real story?" I showed him the photo on my phone, the one everyone had seen by now. "Look closer," I said. "Look at the guy." Mike squinted, and then I saw it, the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Holy crap," he muttered. "That's Troy Barron." The name didn't ring a bell. "Who's that?" I asked. "Regional manager at Hartwell Insurance," Mike said. "Richard's golden boy. Drives a BMW, always in a tailored suit. Thinks he's God's gift to women." The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like rust. "If Lydia's been messing around with Troy Barron," Mike said, This isn't just cheating. This is career suicide. That guy's her boss's boss. Pieces started snapping together in my head. The late nights, the guarded phone, the way she flinched when I mentioned the man in the photo. I need to know for sure, I said. Mike leaned back, crossing his arms. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking it's time to do some investigating. A grin crept across his face. Count me in. But before I left, he added, you should know, your little social media stunt cost Troy big time. Word is, Richard called him into the office this morning. So the whole company's buzzing. That night, I parked across the street from Lydia's office building. Old habits die hard. The military trained me to observe, to wait. At 5:30 sharp, she walked out to her car, hair pulled up, heels clicking against the pavement. But instead of heading home, she turned right out of the parking lot and drove toward downtown. I followed at a distance, headlights off, keeping 2 cars between us. She pulled into the Riverside Apartments, the same upscale complex by the waterfront where Troy Barron was rumored to live. I watched her park, glance around, and walk into Building C like she'd done it 100 times before. 20 minutes later, she came back out, not alone. A tall man in a sharp navy suit followed behind her. Even from across the street, I could recognize him from the photo. Troy Barron. They got into his BMW and drove off together. I sat in my truck for an hour, the engine off, my heart pounding so loud it filled the silence. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a dare. It was an affair. When I got home, I called my old army buddy Darius. He ran a private security company out of Portland, the kind of guy who could find a needle in a haystack and tell you who sharpened it. I need help, I said. What kind of help? The kind you don't ask for on paper. Darius chuckled. Sounds like someone's in trouble. You could say that. I told him everything. The photo, the fallout, what I'd seen that night at Riverside. So you want to know how deep this goes? He asked. I want to know everything. How long it's been happening, what they're planning, all of it. Give me 48 hours, he said. I'll call you when I've got something. The next morning, I was in the garage, pretending to work on a broken lawnmower I didn't care about, when I heard a knock on the door. It was Sienna. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. We need to talk, she said. I stepped aside. She walked in, holding her purse like it was a lifeline. I feel terrible about everything, she began. The photo, the party, it all got out of hand. Did it? I asked. Or did it just expose what was already going on? She looked away. I don't know what you mean. You do, I said softly. Troy Barron. How long has it been? Her lip trembled. I can't. Sienna, I saw them together yesterday, I said. I know about the apartment. The only question is whether you'll help me understand or keep lying for her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. 6 months, she whispered. It started at the company retreat. She said it was just physical, that she loved you, but she needed something exciting. I felt the words like punches to the ribs. She made me promise not to tell anyone, Sienna said. I thought it would burn out. I thought she'd get it out of her system and marry you anyway. I couldn't even find words. But then, she continued, she started talking about calling off the wedding. I panicked. I thought if she had one last wild night, she'd realize what she was giving up. I stared at her. So the Bachelorette party was, what?
A test? She wanted to see if she could walk away from him, Sienna said. But when he showed up at the bar, she shook her head. She lit up like a Christmas tree. That's when I knew. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She's in love with him. That hit harder than I expected. Not the cheating, I'd seen that coming, but the realization that she'd built a whole other life while pretending to build one with me. There's more, Sienna said quietly. Troy's been promising to leave his wife. He says once he gets the promotion to vice president, he'll have enough money to make a clean break. I blinked. His wife? Sienna nodded. He's been married 15 years, 2 kids in private school, and yes, Lydia knows. I felt the air leave my lungs. So she's waiting for him to get promoted? Then what? Run away together? She thinks he's serious. She thinks she's different. When Sienna left, I stood in my garage, surrounded by wrenches and oil cans and half-finished repairs. 8 years of being the reliable one, the steady one, the man who fixed what was broken. And now, the thing that was broken was me. They thought I'd just fade away quietly. They thought humiliation would make me small. But they forgot one thing. The quiet ones, when pushed too far, are often the most dangerous.
Darius called at 6 a.m. on Friday. His voice had that clipped, alert cadence I remembered from deployment, the sound of bad news wrapped in certainty. "Your girl's been busy," he said. "I've got hotel receipts, credit card statements, and enough text messages to ghostwrite a paperback. Want the highlights? Give me everything." He didn't waste time. "Twice a week for 6 months. Same place, Riverside Inn. He pays cash for the rooms, but she's been using her card for dinners, gifts, a boutique lingerie store I won't attempt to pronounce. She's not covering her tracks." My throat felt tight. "What about the texts?" "That's where it gets interesting," he said. "He's been feeding her the fairy tale. Promotion to VP. Leaving his wife. New life. Together." But the guy's leverage to the hilt. Big mortgage, private school tuition, golf club dues. He's not leaving that marriage unless someone else pays for it. I closed my eyes. Does she know? "Based on these messages, Lydia thinks it's imminent," he said. "She's actually been looking at apartments, and not studio prices either. She's planning to move in with him once the wedding is officially off." I pressed my thumb into the edge of the counter until it hurt. "Send me everything." "Already in your inbox," Darius said, "and there's one more thing. Troy's got a reputation. This isn't the first time. Same playbook, different women." "How many?" "At least 2 I can verify," he said. "Different offices, different cities. He promises the moon, then disappears when the math gets ugly." A pause. "You okay?" I stared at the oil-stained concrete of my garage. "I'm done being okay," I said. "I'm going to talk to him." "Careful," Darius said. "You don't need a charge to make this worse." "I'm not threatening him," I said. "I'm informing him." I waited until just before 9 that night, when the parking lot at Riverside Apartments hummed with returning commuters and delivery scooters weaving around puddles. I parked where the cameras would see my plates clean as daylight. I wanted a record of how this started. The BMW rolled in like an advertisement, glossy, self-assured, indifferent to everyone else's dents. Troy stepped out in a navy suit, tie loosened, phone glued to his ear. He moved like a man certain the world would shift to keep his shoes dry. I stepped out of my truck and met him halfway. "Troy Barron?" He turned, squinting past the sodium glow. "Who's asking?" "Eli Griffin," I said. "You know who I am." Recognition slid across his face like a shadow. He straightened, tucking his phone away. Look, if this is it's about more than the photo, I said. He held up his hands, palms open. I'm not discussing anything with you. If you want to go through counsel. I'm not here to argue, I said gently, almost bored. I'm here to set expectations. He tried a smile. The kind that works on interns and waiters and people who need the tip. It didn't work on me. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to end whatever this is with Lydia tonight. You can't tell me what to do, he said.
Actually, I said, I can tell you what I will do. I pulled out my phone and opened the draft email. To Richard Hartwell, CC, your wife, attachments, hotel receipts, screenshots, timestamps. It goes the moment you let Lydia believe there's a future here. His throat bobbed. You're bluffing. I tapped the screen. The whoosh of the sent email was small, almost cheerful. He lunged. Bad choice. 8 years of military training and 15 of throwing water heaters around for a living had left me grounded where it counts. I shifted, caught his wrist, and turned his momentum into the hood of his own car. Metal, breath, a muffled curse. I leaned close enough for him to count the seconds between my words. Next time you decide to detonate someone's life, I said,
make sure they don't know how to defuse yours. I let go. He straightened, shaking, eyes darting to the building, as if witnesses might arrive to pull him back into the script where he always wins. No one came. I walked away without looking back. Behind me, keys fumbled. The BMW door slammed like punctuation. By the time I hit my driveway, my phone was lighting up with calls I didn't answer. Lydia? Richard? An unknown number that turned out to be a reporter with a voice like a smile. I put the phone face down and sat in the truck until the cab cooled from body heat. For the first time in days, the shaking stopped. Not because I'd won, but because the game wasn't secret anymore. Morning brought a new kind of storm. Someone had filmed the confrontation from a third-floor balcony. Grainy, angled, enough to tell a story. By breakfast, the clip had half the town picking teams and the other half making popcorn. Local handyman schools, corporate homewrecker, justice served in the parking lot, toxic masculinity on parade. You learn fast that public opinion isn't a jury or it's a weather vane. It points whichever way the loudest wind blows. I ignored it and went to work. Fixing a broken disposal in a kitchen that smelled like onions and lemon soap felt like standing on actual ground. You turn the wrench, it tightens, water stops, cause and effect. At 10 sharp, Lydia pounded on my front door. When I opened it, she was pale and furious, hair pulled into a tight knot like armor. You destroyed everything, she hissed, stepping past me into the living room as if the house still knew her name. I destroyed everything? I kept my voice level, hands at my sides. I'm not the one who turned our wedding into a layover. Troy lost his job, she snapped. Richard fired him this morning. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said. I put a name on something you were hiding. She folded her arms, chin up. We love each other. I should have laughed. I didn't. Ask him about Jennifer Morrison, I said softly, or Sarah Chen, former employees. He promised the same story. You're lying. Am I? I nodded toward her phone. When's the last time he texted you? Her gaze flickered. She swiped, scrolled. The air changed while she read the absence. He's figuring things out, she said, but her voice had lost its center. He'll call. He's figuring out how to talk to his wife without losing half his assets, I said, and how to keep the next promotion away from this zip code.
She closed her eyes and inhaled through her nose like a person bracing for a needle. "I hate you," she whispered. "That's fine," I said. "You'll hate yourself more when you remember I asked for the truth before any of this." She left without slamming the door. That almost hurt more. It meant she still wanted to be the reasonable one in the story she'd already burned. I stood at the window and watched her car back out, the same careful angle she'd practiced 100 times in my driveway, the rear bumper clearing the hedge by 2 inches. Some habits, it turns out, survive everything. Mike texted, "How's it feel to be famous for the second time in a week?" I replied. "Like I haven't started yet." He called. "You sure you want to keep pushing?" "I'm not pushing," I said. "I'm anchoring. If I let them float the story downstream, I drown." He was quiet for a beat. "Then anchor hard," he said. "I've got your back." The calls from Richard turned into a meeting request. "My office, noon. We settle this like professionals." I went. Hartwell Insurance occupied a glass rectangle that reflected the sky like it wanted to be anywhere else. Reception smiled the way receptionists do. Soft, practiced, a gate with hinges. Richard's office was what money looks like when it's ashamed of itself. Walnut desk, quiet carpet, a view designed to forgive.
He didn't offer a chair. "You've embarrassed my daughter," he began. "You've embarrassed this company." "I didn't post the photo to your corporate page," I said. "Your daughter's friends did the heavy lifting." His jaw flexed. "You sent me an email with baseless—" "Receipts attached," I said. "Time stamped, room numbers, the boutique with the red logo on Exchange Street. Do you want me to read the last 4 digits of her card?" Colour rose under his collar. "Mr. Griffin, this isn't a courtroom." "It's not a wedding either," I said. "And whose decision was that?" He exhaled through his nose, measured. Then he did something I didn't expect. He sat. "Whatever you think of me," he said, "I care about my daughter and my grandchildren someday. I want to minimize the damage." "Damage is honest," I said, "and cover up his rot." We stared at each other across the desk, while the city pretended to matter beyond the glass. He spoke first. "Troy has been reassigned." "Florida?" I asked, a flicker. "You've done your homework." "So has your legal department," I said. "Let me guess. Non-disclosure, neutral reference, get him out of the blast radius." His silence was confirmation enough. "I'm not your problem," I said finally. "I'm your weather report. The storm already happened." When I left, the receptionist didn't look up. Professionals learn to hold their gaze like that, fixed on nothing so everything can pass. The footage of the parking lot confrontation kept climbing. With it came the inevitable commentary, half righteous, half poisonous, all hungry. And then a different kind of attention arrived. My so-called friends. It started with a call from Dave Morrison, the kind of call where you can hear someone pacing a tidy kitchen, angry at the air. "We needed to talk," he said. "About what?" "About what you did to Lydia and to Troy." "What I did?" I said. "Dave, your wife was on Troy's list 2 years ago." "That's different," he snapped. "We worked through it. We're stronger now." "You're free to be grateful," I said. "You're not free to rewrite physics. Cause and effect still applies." He hung up. Within an hour, my feed barbed with familiar names, Tom, Mark, posting the paragraph-length equivalent of folded arms. Private messages turned into group loyalty oaths. I recognize the shape of it: isolate, invert, erase. If you can't disprove the truth, turn the truth teller into the problem. I decided to stop answering. You cannot negotiate with a story that has decided what it needs you to be. That evening, under a sky the colour of dishwater, I drove back to Riverside one more time. Not to look for Troy, but to stand where I'd said the thing that couldn't be unsaid. The lot was quieter. The balcony where the video had been filmed was empty. The building hummed with the ordinary sorrow of apartments after dinner. Forks, TV laughter, a distant argument about the thermostat. I leaned my shoulders against the cool concrete of a support column and let the air in. I wasn't proud of the parking lot grip, but I wasn't ashamed either. There's a difference between breaking someone and stopping them from breaking you.
I drove home by the long route, past the hardware store that still sets out a carved pumpkin every October, past the diner where the coffee tastes like a reliable decision, past the river that carries leaves the way time carries names. The town looked exactly the same as it had the day before I knew. That's the cruel part. When your life collapses, most of the world keeps its schedule. Lydia texted at midnight, "Can we talk? Not fight, just talk." I stared at the glowing words until they blurred, then typed, "Tomorrow, noon, my place." I set the phone face down and watched the ceiling again. The same fan blades, the same slow revolution. I thought about vows, about the simple ceremony we'd planned behind the old church with a blue door. I thought about the guest list.
Now a census of fault lines. I thought about the ring in a drawer that suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. Sleep didn't come, morning did. It always does, eventually. At noon, Lydia stood in my doorway holding a paper cup of coffee like a peace offering she didn't know how to extend. She looked smaller in daylight, like the edges of her were exhausted from holding their shape. "Can I come in?" "Yeah." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned centerpieces and seating charts, and whether Aunt Lee should be near the speaker or as far from it as decency would allow. "I'm not going to lie," she said. "That would be pointless." I nodded. She didn't meet my eyes. "I thought this would burn out," she said. "I thought I'd get it out of my system and then come home to you like nothing happened." "You were planning to marry me," I said, "and then move out?" Her mouth trembled. "I was planning to decide," she said, as if a decision would present itself if I just kept walking both roads long enough. "That's not a decision," I said quietly. "That's delay." She swallowed. He told me he was leaving her, that he just needed the promotion to make it clean. He said I made him feel alive. I wanted to believe it. And now, "He hasn't called," she said. "Not since that night, not since you." "It's not because of me," I said. "It's because of math, because the numbers never loved you back." She pressed her fingers to her forehead. "I hate myself," she said. I shook my head. "No, not yet. Hate is cheap." Accountability is expensive. She set the coffee down, untouched. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything." "It fixes the sentence," I said, "not the paragraph." We sat there in the useless quiet that comes after a fire is already out. There's nothing to save. There's only what didn't burn. She glanced toward the hallway, toward the drawer where the ring was. "Do you want me to—" "I'll mail it," I said. She nodded. When she stood, the chair legs made a soft sound against the floor, a noise I'd heard 1,000 times and would hear in my sleep for the rest of the month. At the door, she turned. "Eli," she said, "for what it's worth, you were home, even when I wasn't." I didn't have an answer kind enough to hold that. So I gave her nothing.
I called Darius. "Now what?" he asked. Now, I said, I make sure they don't get to write the ending. Careful, he said again. You're winning. That's when people get sloppy. I'm not winning, I said. I'm correcting the record. I didn't know then how much more there was to correct, I did, or how fast the town would try to spin the compass again. But I knew this. The next move wouldn't happen in a parking lot. It would happen where gossip feels safest, in public, with witnesses.
Saturday arrived grey and wet. The kind of rain that doesn't bother to fall. It just hangs in the air and weighs everything down. Millbrook's Fall Festival went on anyway. Food trucks lined the square. Craft tents bloomed like little white sails. Kids in rubber boots stamped puddles into comets. I walked the perimeter with my hands in my jacket pockets, past the cider stand and the pie contest and the church booth selling knitted hats. If you didn't know better, you'd think the town had nothing to argue about. But I knew better. Darius had called that morning with a final briefing. Phone records, screenshots, a few clean audio files with time stamps clear as church bells, and a quiet warning. They're planning to provoke you, Eli. Dave's been coordinating.
Plenty of witnesses, plenty of phones. Remember, you're not here to win a fight. You're here to finish a story. Copy, I said. I spotted them by the cider stand. Dave, Tom, Mark, the triangulation of men who needed a different villain than their own reflection. They scanned the crowd like hunters with bad maps. Lydia stood 20 yards away beneath the edge of a tent. Her hair was pulled tight. Rain jeweled the strands near her temple. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't anything, just waiting to see what world she'd have to live in next. I didn't approach them. I walked to the small stage where a local country band was packing up, coiling cables with the patience of people who keep their own time. Betty Walsh, festival organizer, clipboard general, hovered with a smile that had seen storms before. Betty, I said, can I borrow the mic for a minute? She tilted her head. Announcement? Something like that. She considered me the way church ladies do, a scan for sin and sincerity. Then she nodded and handed over the microphone. I tapped it once. The thump rolled across the square. Voices dimmed, not to silence, but to the hush of a room about to listen. Good afternoon, I said. My name is Eli Griffin D. A ripple went through the crowd, the rustle of recognition. Not all kind, not all cruel, just invested. I don't want to take up your day, I said. But my life became a public conversation without my permission. So I'm going to tell you a few things I can prove. I connected my phone to the little mixer with a short black cable. Darius's files sat in a neat folder like ammunition carefully counted. Clip 1, I said quietly, more to myself than to them. I pressed play. Dave's voice filled the square, not cinematic, just ordinary and unmistakable. Yeah, same price as last time. I'll meet you on commercial at 9. Bring 2 extra. We'll square up after. A murmur went through the crowd. Hands froze around cider cups. Some faces pinched into denial. Others relaxed into the relief of a suspicion confirmed. I stopped the clip. Clip 2, I said. Tom on a phone that had no idea one day it would sing to 100 people.
Use the River Inn, room under Peterson, and don't text me after 10. My wife reads my notifications in the morning. The air changed. A woman near the front made a sound I will always hear, as the opposite of laughter. Clip 3. Mark, casual as weather, bragging to a friend who wasn't one. It's not stealing if you put it back before the quarter ends. I'm just smoothing the cash flow. The casino doesn't care where the chips come from. Phones were up everywhere now. Rain glittered on screens like confetti from the wrong parade. "These are the men," I said, "who've spent the last week telling you I'm unstable, that I overreacted, that I turned a private matter into a circus. I'll let you decide what a circus looks like." I unplugged the cable and set the mic back on its stand. The square buzzed, not a roar, not a riot, just the human sound of minds rearranging furniture. They reached me in under a minute. Dave first, face red, shoulders forward, the posture of a man who never learned to write apologies in his own hand. Tom beside him, eyes scanning for exits. Mark a step behind, jaw tight, hands hidden in a way that taught my bones to notice. "You self-righteous," Dave began. "You can finish that with any noun you like," I said. "This is a free square." "You had no right," Tom spat. "You made it public when you made it a weapon," I said. "I named what you were swinging." "Turn off your phone," Mark said through his teeth. It wasn't a request. I didn't move, neither did the phones around us. A ring of small blue witnesses, patient and merciless. Dave swung first.
A bad looping punch, the kind that assumes the other guy will be stunned by the audacity of it. I stepped to the side, felt the air of his fist pass where my face wasn't, and pressed 2 fingers into the hinge of his elbow. He gasped. A sound that deflated rather than exploded. Tom grabbed a beer bottle from a nearby table and raised it. Mike, God bless the friend who reads a room like a map, came from nowhere and wrapped Tom's arm, turning glass into nothing more than a prop. The bottle clinked to the grass, intact, ignored. Mark pulled a knife, shiny, 3 inches, the kind that thinks it can make a point when words fail. People shrieked. The crowd split and swirled, a flock, taking new direction. I didn't back up.
I reached for a folding chair leaning against the stage and snapped it open in one motion. Metal is honest. It remembers what force feels like. His first thrust met the chair's crossbar and stuck for a half second. Enough. I pivoted and turned the chair like a door on a hinge, catching him across the temple with the edge he hadn't considered. He dropped. Not dramatic, not fatal, just down. Silence arrived like weather after that, sudden and everywhere. Then the square inhaled. Somebody started clapping. Then somebody else. Then the rest. An applause that didn't feel like a celebration so much as a relief. I set the chair down and stepped back from the bodies of 2 men who were going to have a very long afternoon. Dave was on his knees, breath sawing. Tom stared at the unbroken bottle as if it had betrayed him. Mark blinked at the sky like the rain was spelling words he couldn't read. I didn't raise my hands, I didn't bow. I picked up the microphone again and turned toward the tent where Lydia watched me, like a person watches a ship choose a direction. Too far away to stop, too near to ignore. "Lydia," I said, my voice low and even, "would you come here for a moment?" She hesitated, then crossed the wet grass, the crowd parting not out of spectacle, but I think out of something like pity. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the thick envelope Darius had overnighted. I handed it to her. She didn't open it. Her fingers trembled against the flap. "Go on," I said gently. "It's yours." She slid out the stack, glossy photos on top, copies of documents beneath. The first picture showed Troy at Disney World last weekend, his arm around a woman and a child with a balloon. The second showed the same trio in front of a realtor's sign in Florida. The lease agreement behind it had signatures neat as manners. He wasn't fired, I said softly into the mic, not to shame her, but because truth deserved a voice with a spine. He was transferred. Your boss made sure the fallout landed somewhere sunny, and Troy took his family with him. The words didn't break her face, they emptied it. Like weather clearing, not because a storm ended, but because it decided to rain somewhere else. I set the mic down, let the stand hold the weight of sound. I leaned closer, so only she could hear the last part. He never loved you, Lydia, I said. He loved the way you believed him. She closed the envelope as if it were hot. Her mouth opened, a word tried and failed. Then she turned and walked back through a town that now knew the things she had tried not to know. Sirens sounded in the distance. Not urgent, just inevitable. Someone had called. Someone always does. I set the microphone on Betty's clipboard. Thank you, I said to her, for the time. She nodded once, the way people nod when they've added a page to the ledger they keep for the world. I walked through the square toward my truck. People stepped aside. Some touched my sleeve. Some looked away. A few said my name like a question they were tired of asking. At the edge of the lot, I looked back. Dave sat on the curb, head in his hands. Tom stared into the middle distance where men store stories they'll tell differently later. Mark pressed a napkin to his temple, bleeding enough to be humbled, not enough to be tragic. I drove home the long way again, past the river, past the hardware store, past the life that had looked fine until I saw it from the right angle. The fan still turned on my ceiling when I walked in. I took it down, oiled the motor, tightened the screws, put it back. When it's your job to fix things, you start with the ones that will listen. By evening, the videos had already found their channels. Commentary sprouted like mushrooms after rain. Some poisonous, some nourishing, all loud. I turned off my phone and sat in the garage with the light off, listening to the night make its ordinary sounds. An owl. A car 2 streets over, the soft tick of metal cooling. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel ruined. I felt accurate, as if my life had finally aligned with the facts it contained. The quiet handyman was gone, they said. No, he was still here. He just learned that quiet doesn't mean invisible. I slept. For the first time in weeks, I slept.
Sometimes the person you love hands you a story you can't live inside. You can try to decorate it, put nicer curtains on the lie, or you can step outside and say the part that hurts. Tonight, you heard a man choose accuracy over comfort. He didn't win a prize. He didn't get the girl back. What he got was smaller and stranger, a life that fit the truth. If you have a confession, a moment when the facts wouldn't let you sleep, we're listening. This is the Confessions Stories. I'm your host. Good night.